Hello everyone, happy December 1st. Welcome back to KXAN Live. I'm Esmeralda Zamora and today we have our first warning weather segment that happens every Sunday with KXAN meteorologist Rich Segal. Rich, thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing well. I got to go home for some of Thanksgiving, be in my homeland of South Jersey for a few days. Saw my sister and her husband and my niece and her husband and played with the dog and the cats. It was just really nice to be home and grateful for the opportunity that I got to be there.
Yeah, I went home too, and I was just grateful for all the food and all the family that was around me. It was just a great little break from the month of November.
Good. Glad to hear that.
And we're jumping into a topic that you brought today. Can you explain to us what we're going to talk about?
Well, we're going to recap November, and then we're going to explain. We did this once before, but it always bears repeating, especially when the seasons change. We're going to explain the difference between meteorological season, or in this case, meteorological winter, and astronomical winter. They're completely different. One for us better than the other. But first, let's start with our November calendar. We always like to show this to end the month. We had, again, a warmer than normal month. 23 of the 30 days this month were above normal. We ended the month with 4 out of the last 5 being below normal, finally getting that taste of autumn that people had been waiting for. That added to the other below normal temperature on the 5th of November and the one day that we were at normal. So 23 of 30 days where we had a temperature that was above normal. Rain looked like we were going to do well this month. We got off to a really good start in the first 5 days, but then in the second half of the month, we only had 26 hundredths of an inch of rain. So specifically, we look at it this way. In November, we had an average high, the average of all 30 afternoons, or our high temperatures, 7 degrees above the average, 78.5. It's 53.5, 3 degrees above average for the low. So the average mean temperature, 66 degrees, a 5-degree difference between that and the normal. So we were above normal, and we're waiting for the Weather Service to give us their final statistics as to see where this may have been the warmest November, but somewhere in the top 5, I'm sure this is going to play out. We didn't hit 90, so that was good, and our coldest in Austin was the 39 that we had on the 29th, which was on Friday. Rain only 2.26. November is supposed to be a slightly wetter than normal month. When you compare the other 11 months of the year, I believe it's the 5th wettest. But we had only 2.26, and that was a difference of 2/3 of an inch below normal. This coincides with October and September's rain. October, we only had 1/100th, the second driest October ever. In September, we only had 37 hundredths, the 11th driest September. So when you add all this up in meteorological fall, which again we'll explain in a few minutes, we only had 2.64 inches between September 1st and November 30th, a difference of 7 2/3 inches. We were below normal for that 3-month period, and that just made the drought worse. The December rainfall outlook says near normal to slightly wetter than normal. Nick Bannon, our chief meteorologist, will be addressing that in a future blog. I think that it was published today. So the drought monitor continues to show, as a result of that lack of rain for the fall season, which is supposed to be a wetter season, for Travis, Hayes, and the southern half of Blanco counties, we are still in an extreme drought. Most of the rest of the area is in a moderate to severe drought, and with a little bit of rain in the forecast this week, I really don't know that we're going to get much of a change here because in our 7-day forecast, which you'll see at 10 o'clock on our morning newscast, our third morning newscast today, you'll find that we have rain in the forecast, but predicted rain totals are not expected to be all that much.
Wow. So now that we are jumping into the next question, I wanted to start by first asking you, what is a meteorological season?
Okay. I'm not sure when this all started, but it was a good thing that it started. And I've got some things on my graph that explain a little bit about what meteorological season is. Meteorological season is the season's done in 3-month increments. And I'll show you a graphic that has astronomical season after this. It is based on temperatures as astronomical is too, but it's got fixed starts and end dates. We know that, for example, meteorological winter will start today.
Yes.
And it will end on February 28th outside of a leap year, in which case it would end on February 29th. And that leads into meteorological spring, which runs from March 1st to May 31st. Meteorological summer, June 1st to August 31st. Meteorological autumn, September 1st to November 30th. This is easier for meteorologists when it comes to statistical information because of the fixed beginning and the fixed end. And thus, it makes it easier to compare data. You can always go back and say, well, what about that season? What about this particular time of the season? And so for meteorologists, this is allowed for excellent record keeping so that we can go back and, when we want to look at data from the past, we only have to search that way instead of going, okay, well, when did astronomical season start and when did it end? And so on page 2 here, astronomical season has 2 full months and 2 partial months. So for example, astronomical winter will begin later on this month, around December 21st. So you have part of December, all of January, all of February, and then part of March. So it's based on the Earth's position to the sun. It is not as economical because of the fact that there are varied days. You could have a season that has, in one year, it has a day or two more than the previous year. And so it makes it a little more of a challenge to do the record keeping. You could still compare the dates, but you just can't compare the seasons as adequately and as efficiently as possible. It is the time when the season changes based on the solstice for the summer and for the winter solstice, as well as the autumnal and the spring equinox. And so for me and for my colleagues in the weather office, we definitely love to be able to use meteorological season, meteorological winter, fall, summer, spring, as the basis for our statistical information and how we impart that and how easy it is for us to make sure that you all know what we know.
Wow. That's
a mouthful.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. I know a lot of people, I didn't know the difference between the two. I'm sure a lot of people didn't know either. We did get a comment and somebody said that these seasons are good for plants. Is that true?
Well, it's interesting that the questioner or the viewer should say that, because next week we are going to be talking about how the warm winter sometimes makes it a little bit of a challenge. But to answer the specific, for some, yes. For other plants, maybe not so much, because when you get that early start to the planting season, when you get to that start when temperatures are warmer than normal, you run the risk of having plants bloom too quickly. And then you run the risk of there being a freeze at some point before a particular season is over. For example, we could have a warm January, and then in December we get that, like we did in 2021, where we had that 1 week where temperatures barely got above freezing in that week, and that just does more than it does good. But we're gonna venture into that area next week.
So for this winter that we're entering, is there anything you could share with us about astronomical or meteorological season? The fact that we're in a La Nina weather pattern, and Nick has explained this on several occasions, indicates to me that unfortunately we are going to be in a warmer and drier 3-month period. That's what's been predicted by the Climate Prediction Center. This is not what we wanted to see, but this is what it looks like we're going to get now. That does not mean that we will have a few periods of cold weather, colder than normal weather, but it looks like the majority of the 3-month season that started today at midnight is going to present a challenge, because, again, when you have a warmer than normal forecast, the chances are pretty good you'll have in that season a drier to near normal precipitation outlook, and that's what we're seeing on the long-range models right now. Well, we have already experienced some colder weather, and if it's not going to get any colder than this, I'm not complaining because
Right.
it feels good outside.
Well, last week when we were talking about this, we were showing you a graph that said how we can have 3 seasons within a 24-hour period. I believe we had spring on Monday, winter on Tuesday morning, and then fall on Tuesday afternoon. So we did not get summer. We have some crazy weather here in our viewing area, no matter what. But see, in the winter, some people say, well, this is why I moved to Texas, because I want to be in a climate that's warmer than normal. I want the weather pattern to be warmer than normal. But we do know that we will have periods where temperatures will get to freezing. Now, we have not hit freezing yet in Austin,
Nope.
and the average first date is coming up. We have had some freezes out in the hill country, and we're going to have some more freezes before the season is over. But on the whole, it is going to be a warmer than normal December and perhaps near normal for precipitation.
Well, I'm sure everyone was wondering that, so glad you let us know about
But
that.
next week we'll talk about that, how that affects just not the plants but other things as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure everyone wants to know about all the other things that it affects and how we're going to feel during that month. Well, thank you so much, Rich, for
Well,
joining
you're welcome.
us. We'll see you next week and when we talk about more on this topic. Thank you. And that's all we have today for First Warning Weather Q&A with meteorologist Rich Segal. Remember, we'll be back tomorrow with many more streams, and we hope to see you here with us. Thank you.